A reading from the Gospel of Luke. Jesus said also to the one who had invited him, "When you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or your rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." What an interesting image when you throw a banquet. Well, I don't know how many of us are in the position to throw banquets these days. Quite honestly, I read an article recently that said many Americans have given up even having a dining room table just because of the realities of how space and housing costs are going. Lots of folks are making the decision to do without what used to be normative in our society, and that is to have a table around which we could gather people. So let's just assume that you or I are one of those Americans who doesn't really have the ability to throw a banquet. So what does this teaching of Jesus mean to you and me? Because even if we're not setting a literal table for folks and gathering people around, we can expand that image, because most of us know that there's something in this life of which we have an abundance. I mean, that's what a banquet is, right? The host sharing out of a sense of abundance. The best banquets are ones where there's plenty and all the drinks and the food are flowing and the conversation is flowing and the evening is flowing, or the afternoon. So that wonderful sense of abundance and banquet table together. Most of us have something in our lives where we have an abundance. It could be a peculiar little thing. I have an abundance of skill in handcrafts. So I can share from that. I have an abundance of knowledge because I read books all the time. I can share from that. I have an abundance of compassion, so I can share from that. You can fill in the blank here because you know what it is in your life of which you have an abundance. And there is something about that. When we have an abundance of something, it is often because it's coming from a place of giftedness. I had another priest really illuminate this for me once when he said, you're speaking about spiritual gifts. Spiritual gifts are gifts that come from God, and because they come from God and they are divine, they are, like God, inexhaustible. And so when we are operating out of our gifts, our spiritual gifts, we are not tired by doing that. If you are a teacher, you love to teach, you have the gift of wisdom, the gift of teaching, you cannot be worn out by teaching. You might be worn out by your workplace, but you can't be worn out by teaching, because this is a gift that comes through you and comes from the divine and therefore is inexhaustible. And in fact, when you're working out of that gift, you often feel energized by it. Same thing if you happen to be skilled in handicraft, if you are an artist, if you're a musician, if you are operating out of that gift, out of that abundance of skill and energy and passion around something, it is coming from somewhere beyond you. It is coming through you. It's coming into the world, and it's energizing you at the same time. So I hope we can think about this teaching of Jesus about banqueting when you throw a banquet. Not many of us are in a position to be throwing banquets these days, but all of us, each of us, is in a position to be sharing from the gifts which God has given us. And those gifts are given, spiritual gifts are always given by God to us for the good of the community, so that the community may be strengthened through them, through us. And so as we are approaching, today is Monday. If you're watching in the United States, you know that this is the eve of an election, a national election. And so maybe, hopefully, some of us have an abundance of compassion and love and deep peace and calm. I have heard from so many people a sense of being anxious about this election, and I think the proclamation of the church at this point is, no matter what happens in our civic world, and we all, I hope, have done or will do our civic duty and take part in the democracy, however that transpires in your own life and belief system, I hope that each one of us will take part in that, obviously. But whatever the outcome of this, we are all still in this together. We will all be still able to and bidden by Christ to share out of our abundance, to set that banqueting table out of whatever abundance we carry. I hope that you will think clearly and deeply about where it is you can give, where it is you can invite people to partake of God's gifts through you, given to you in abundance, and that you will find ways to exercise that hosting and banqueting and generous, abundant energy in your life. May God be with you this day. May God bless you and keep you this day and always. Amen.